Welcome to The World As I Like It To Be. I'm your host, Eric Donnelly Small. On today's The World As I Like It To Be, order in the court. Kimberly Porter, the police officer who shot and killed Dwayne Wright, goes on trial in Michigan, while in Wisconsin, the trial of two mass killers. First, Darrell Brooks drove his car into a parade, killing 6. Days later, Ethan Crumbley shot and killed 4 students with a handgun bought by his parents for Christmas. These are the same parents who would later be charged with involuntary manslaughter on Friday and go on the run over the weekend. Then a follow-up of some of the legal stories we've been discussing. Alec Baldwin discusses the behind-the-scenes cast and crew controversies that preceded the death of Helena Hutchins, while Elizabeth Holmes' trial slowly draws to a close. Don't forget you can find out more about this show on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter at The World As I Like. And you can support this show at our PayPal tip page, which is py.pl/1P capital V capital C P capital Y. All this and more on today's show. Stay tuned. Welcome to the show. I am your host, Eric Darnley Small, and I want to thank people for joining me today for today's show. And just a FYI that today's show is going to be the last video show of this year. As we all know, the year is coming to an end, and so is the live version of this show. This was originally thought of and originally done as somewhat of an experiment, and to see if it could be done, see if I could solo be able to produce a show and do this kind of a show without a crew, sort of make it up and on the fly, learn certain technologies, learn how to stream and learn how to make everything work the way I wanted it to work, and so that it actually looked like a presentable show, that it reflected what I was doing in the podcast world as a video show. Haven't done that in terms of having guests in. That's a whole nother very complex portion of this whole thing. But I have been able to succeed, I think, in being able to stream live an actual show. This show runs sometimes, certainly over an hour, sometimes 2 hours, or close to 2 hours, as did Wednesday's show. And this was very much a work in progress. I had to become very educated very quickly to do it. That's one reason why I don't have guests on it, because adding that portion of it, I just wasn't ready for that. So most of the guest interviews are done in the traditional audio-only podcast. So all that to say that this is going to be the last one for this year, video one. However, it is not going to be the last podcast. The last podcast will be either next week or the week before. It's going to be just before Thanksgiving, Christmas. So it'll probably air that week, although I might record it beforehand. But this has been a really educational thing for me. It's been fun. It's been hectic. It's been kind of crazy. And if any of you out there have seen this, or maybe you will see the video recording of this at vtip.com, v-tip.com/7T, and I can, if you are watching this right now, I can show you that lower third, vtip.com/-7T as in Thomas. As well, if you go to the YouTube page, it's youtube.com/C/The World As I Like. So, all that to say, this is going to be the last of this. Hopefully people who have seen this will, or maybe see it later, will have some ideas of what to do, what not to do, and corrections, and maybe they can let me know if they would like to see more of these going forward. Anyway, we're going to get right to it. So this is a show that's going to be dedicated almost exclusively to litigation. There are some big legal stories that have come out over the last 2 weeks. the big, last week was the story about Roe versus the potential end of Roe versus Wade with Mississippi law, but it is really about the radical nature of this new court, this new Supreme Court that is very conservative, the most conservative court in the nation. But what's also striking is it's about politics, because when you realize, as has been repeated, I think if you've been watching certain shows, has repeated for a long time, Roe versus Wade was decided by, once again, mostly Republican judges on the Supreme Court. And they decided 7-2 that a woman has a constitutional right to an abortion. Right? That was 1970, 71, 72, somewhere around that. So not quite 50 years, but 40 something years. And to look at that as one benchmark of who the Republican Party was, and then to see where it is today at this benchmark, to see how radical the court has gone. Because now, and again, the decision has not been made. It will not come out until June of next year, and I am certain it's going to be the last decision that's going to be released because of the weight of this. But to see now, just to play devil's advocate, a 6-3 court decide that what was done 7-2 Republican back 40 something years ago, all that precedent should be thrown out because it was wrongly decided by those Republican judges, goes to show you how radical the Republican Party has become. Not just because, 40 years ago or so, this is before the Reagan Revolution or so, but it is still, the Democrats and the Republicans have still very big differences. I think it is the post civil rights legislation, right? Civil rights legislation has already been passed, is implemented, and the new struggle now is how to implement these laws without there's being a whole lot of without it ripping the country apart. So you have, their solution is redlining and white flight and all this kind of stuff. And, busing becomes an issue at this point in time. But so, what's going on with women is at the same time is that women are trying to get back into the workforce, right? They're now demanding divorces. They're now being single mothers will later on, I think, particularly by the 80s, will become a thing where you have more and more women who are not married, who are working mothers, and their fathers are not there. So, and at the same time, you have this collision of the Reagan Revolution as well. So, what we're seeing with this decision with Mississippi versus women's health is that we're going backwards. This is a time travel. We're going back years, and the country is moving forward. The rest of us are moving forward, but those who want to go back, those who want to try and I guess live the old life are on the court right now, and they are trying to put us back to a time where not only do women have the rights, that they used to have, not only do African Americans have the right to vote anymore, or not have their votes discounted, or have fake voter fraud charges against them, but also you're going to see next up is gay rights. Gay marriage is going to be on the chopping block next. Prior to all these three were the attack on voting rights. I should have looked this up beforehand, but the decisions by the court that basically unions cannot, which are anti-union bills, which is workers' rights, that unions cannot prevent or cannot force their members to give dues, is one of the most ridiculous decisions by the court ever made. And that was a number of years ago. Citizens United, people talk about money in politics. Well, money in politics affects workers. You could look at that as an anti-worker right. So this attack on unions predates all of this. So I just want to go there. I want to take a look at, I think it's TransUnion's Supreme Court decision. That is actually, no, that's from this year. I'm going to look up the very first The union decision that I'm really interested in is the one that related to the ability for unions to be able to union dues to be able to cut funding, or the right to work, and that gave us right to work laws and all that kind of business. But anyway, the court is moving further to the right. They're trying to go back. They're successfully going to moving back. And the other thing that's happening, which I'm going to talk about, probably it'll be next year, we'll talk more on, is the movement towards um, giving more power to religious organizations, mostly Christian. I have not yet seen the court really go out of its way to help other than Christian groups. These are evangelical groups who are, and we've seen it mostly in vaccine mandates. Neil Gorsuch wrote an opinion not too long ago, which the writer of an op-ed called frightening, and that he chastised the government for doing anything to prevent the so-called free exercise, the free exercise clause of religion, just about anything, even a pandemic, and demanding, people be vaccinated as almost an egregious attack on their liberty and the ability for folks to exercise freedom of religion. So it's shocking. That's the next thing that's going to happen. We're going to see a pulling back of the civil rights, workers' rights, women's rights, and then gay rights, and then a evolution, or a bringing a rising up of theocratic rights, of these theocratic lawsuits and rights that would have the church be over state, not separation of church and state, but church over state. That's what I see coming. I want to quickly talk about this new piece of news that comes out of CNN, and it's about Lucid Motors. If anyone has been following my personal Twitter, at Eric D. Small, I tweeted that Lucid Motors had become the number one, had won Motor Trend's Car of the Year, and had been sort of described as the perfect car, the way it performed. But it appears as if something is going on. And the reason why I bring this up, something's going on with its stock price, because the SEC has opened up an investigation. And I'm just going to read very quickly here, because this is from today's news. But upstart vehicle maker Lucid Motors disclosed Monday it has received a subpoena from the SEC, sending its shares plunging 10% in early trading. The company said the probe appears to concern the SPAC deal that took it public earlier this year, along with, quote, certain projections and statements. Lucid raised $4 billion through its combination with Churchill Capital Corp, which was a shell company set up to take the company public without having to go through the typical initial public offering process. The deal was announced in February, and shares started trading on the NASDAQ on July. Lucid founded, EPA shares had nearly doubled since they started trading in NASDAQ. The reason why I wanted to go over this is because there's something in here. Shares of Nikola, which plans to make electric and fuel cell powered trucks, plunged September 2020 after Hindenburg Research, a short seller, accused the company of an intricate fraud. Hindenburg claimed that Nikola's products were much further from reaching the market they had advertised. Its founder, Trevor Milton, was forced to resign, and in February, the company's own internal investigation found he misled investors. Milton now faces federal criminal charges, as well as charges from SEC that he deceived investors. Why am I bringing this up? Well, I hope people saw that opening, because we're going to talk about Elizabeth Holmes and the Elizabeth Holmes trial today, and what's been happening. And this SEC filing, this SEC issue right here, is exactly what is going on with Elizabeth Holmes and her company Theranos, right? This is a company. In this case, this is I'd never even heard of this, Nikola. has made certain presentations to the SEC, to investors, and turns out they're fraudulent. They did an internal investigation. Turns out they're fraudulent. So these guys were able to go much further than Theranos was able to go. I think Theranos never had a public option. They never went public. I don't think, but the same situation exists. So it's all just to say that this whole idea, fake it till you make it, of trying to deceive investors, this is something that goes on all the time. It continues to go on. And if Lucid is one of them, turns out to be another Theranos, another Nikola, it's going to be, I think the SEC is going to be all over, and it's going to cause a chilling effect within both of these companies. California, I think that Nikola is probably in California use. Lucid is also a California company. It's going to cause a chilling effect for investing. And people are going to think these things are all frauds and all scams. So this is something to really, I think, look into and look out for, because it is going to be really sad if that happens. We can't trust investors, and we can't trust, particularly as buyers, that you can't trust that these things are actually what they say they are. Moving forward, now let me get on to, I want to talk about this Minnesota case because, Dwayne Wright, this is one of the guys who, during the Black Lives Matter movement, during the during all of the unrest that happened last year, George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, Dwayne Wright, he became one of them, one in a long list. And people may not remember this, so I'm actually going to play this. This is from, the trial began last week, but I am going to play this just to catch people up. This is from the news with Shepard Smith. This is on CNBC. And this is just something to catch people up on this story.
The police officer who killed Dante Wright is in jail tonight, arrested and charged with second-degree manslaughter. This is Kim Potter, wearing an orange jumpsuit now instead of a uniform. Potter's arrest comes just 3 days after she shot Dante Wright during a traffic stop for expired tags in the Minneapolis suburb of Brooklyn Center. According to the police chief, who has since resigned, Potter thought she was firing her taser, but drew her gun instead by mistake. We learned today from the prosecutor that Potter's taser is yellow with a black grip and was holstered on her left side, while her black handgun was on the right. So in order to draw her taser, she would have had to use her left hand. But as you can see here, she shot and killed Wright with the gun in her right hand. We've seen 3 straight days and nights of unrest and protests taking to the streets, and police are now bracing for more demonstrations tonight. NBC's Jay Gray on the ground in Brooklyn Center for us. Jay, what sort of reaction are you seeing to that officer's arrest?
Hey there, Shep. I want to give you a real-time look at the situation here. The curfew's been extended to 10 o'clock tonight from 10 to 6 in the morning. Last few nights, the curfew hasn't mattered. Take a look. The crowd really growing substantially over the last few minutes here, packed with people who say they'll continue to call for justice for Dante Wright. We've got megaphones out here, banners, and a lot of people very frustrated. They're frustrated with what's going on here at the police station. I can show you behind the fence, stepped up security. We've got the riot police that have just walked in with their shields, helmets, and batons. As you move across, you can see a sheriff's vehicle here with a gun turret at the top and someone actively watching this crowd from below. They are pleased that there have been charges in this case. So is Wright's family, according to their attorney, Ben Crump.
Obviously, they are glad she got charged, but they do hope and pray for a day that we will get equal justice.
Yeah, what we're hearing out here from the crowd is a charge is one thing, A conviction is justice, and that's why they are here, to make sure there is justice for Daunte Wright. Say they're going to be here for as long as necessary, Shep.
Jay Gray, thanks very much. Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.
All right, so that's just something to give people, just to give us a reminder of who this woman was and what this was all about, and how, you know, you can see. I didn't even remember that the military was really out there and folks had guns. I mean, that guy literally had guns pointed at the crowd there. So he was more than happy to take not more than happy, but he was prepared to do whatever it took to make sure things didn't go out of hand. Also significant, this is Minnesota again, the same state that gave us Derek Chauvin. The Minnesota Police Department. I'm going to come back to that. Rolling Stone, excellent article and a statement made by the sheriffs. I want to come back to that. But this is video from, now that was 7 months ago. That video I played from that was back when Porter was arrested and charged. That was from CNBC. This is now from a Friday. When was the 30th? Not Friday. This was day one of jury selection. I'm going to play here. That was this is Tuesday, so it was almost a week ago. I don't think there's any other video that I know of this trial so far, and any other information. This is day one, but this is jury selection. They haven't even gone past jury selection. Day two jury selection is happening. Actually, as I speak, I might, oh no, wait a minute. This was 4 days ago. Let me do that. I think I was going to do day one jury selection, but let me do day four. And one of the reasons I haven't cut to it is I'm getting commercials are coming up, so I want to get rid of those first. But let's listen in on this. This was from December 1st. This was a few days ago. So let's see what this has to say.
Women and 2 men, obviously big news there as the court tries to find an impartial jury that can sit.
That she is a follower of rules. And then the 2 jurors seated today. We have another woman who's the blank slate that we talked about here just a few moments ago, who comes into this with no real experience with law enforcement or interaction with police. And then finally, the other juror that was seated is a mother of 2 children. She's a school teacher, does own a taser, but has never had the chance to use it so far. So, Debbie, let me bring this back to you. Given the makeup of the jury so far, what are your thoughts?
As you went through the explanation there, I think people would be able to see we have really different people. And that's a good thing when it comes to a jury. You don't want a majority of jurors to be individuals who are unwilling to listen to others, individuals with strong positions that are going to essentially take their position and then disregard all others. So here we have a very interesting mix. With teachers, for example, it's very common in school, you'll have 2 students that are saying something happened and they're pointing fingers at one another. And so a teacher, through their experience in a classroom, has to look at the totality of what occurred and decide, all right, what happened? Who do I believe when these 2 students are in fact saying opposing stories? And so those teachers, I think, are going to bring very unique perspectives into that jury room. The blank slate, that juror is likely going to be one who's going to focus on the writings that the court provides, because again, they don't have those life experiences. So they're going to rely on the specific instructions that come from the judge. The rule follower, that's another one who's going to follow the instructions from the judge. So even if the management, the 29-year-old gentleman who is in management or the medical editor, even if they come in and say, but wait, here's how I think we should do things, a rule follower is going to continually focus the group back to the rules that the judge gave them, and that's those jury instructions and the elements of the offense.
And Debbie, we want to get back to the process so far here, and this is going. I'll be honest. I'm surprised that at this point we have 6 jurors seated already.
So this is 6 jurors as of this was again the second. So my thinking is that by today we're going to have we've got to probably have a jury. I'm going to see if I can find anything
about this?
Yes, ma'am.
And at this
I've
time,
never
is it
seen the
you
voir
wish to
dire or the
testify in
voir
this
dire
case?
portion, that the selection of
Okay.
the trial of
And,
the juror selection. I think until fairly recently, I've never seen that done publicly. I think we saw it in the last case with regard to Ahmed Aubrey. We've sort of seen everything, and I think maybe even Rittenhouse as well. But it's very unusual in my thinking to see it, and it's actually pretty boring. All right, we've got something from 2 days ago. This is jury selection, and this is from. It looks like they've got most of the jurors here. I'm going to cut to this now.
One black a woman on this jury, the rest white, so 9 white, 3 minorities, people of color. So I know people are also paying attention to that racial dynamic. So again, we'll pay close attention to these 2 alternates who get selected today. But this is where we jump off from. We're expecting court to gavel in at 9 o'clock. But of course, if we've seen all this week, you kind of never know exactly what's happening in that courtroom until those cameras pull back and we see Judge Regina Chu up on the bench.
All right, I think this would be a good point to bring in Attorney Lee Hutton, who's, we don't have Lee yet. Okay, we will come to Lee here in a little bit. But Paul, let's talk more about the jury, because you mentioned that, we may not have the diversity in terms of racial mix on this jury that maybe a lot of people were looking for, but there clearly is a diversity in life experience on this jury. We have everyone
That's an
here
interesting
from
way to
jurors
frame
who
it.
are retired. We have a juror who is the editor of a medical publication. We have a juror who is.
And let's just remember that this is post Derek Chauvin.
We have a retired school teacher. We have a college student. We have a young professional who's just out of college. So we have a mixture of professionals and working people and retirees with extensive experience. So you're looking at a broad breadth here of what I've come to call walks of life that are sitting on this jury.
And I think that's what you're looking for in your jury. We have a blank slate we've talked about. We have women selected who are grieving the loss of a daughter, a loss of a friend, and a violent stabbing incident. So you have some emotion coming into this. Of course, it will be difficult for some of these jurors who acknowledge during voir dire they haven't necessarily watched the video, if at all, maybe 1 or 2 times, but graphic videos. As being in court yesterday, I can tell you, Katie Wright, Dante's mother, sits behind me throughout the whole thing. She's emotional just during voir dire. You're going to have that human emotion inside that courtroom that these cameras just are not capturing. And you mentioned Juror 55 in passing, the naval veteran who actually during his training, he was asked about it on the witness stand yesterday before he was seated. As a white gentleman in his 50s, kind of a scout master, trained for wilderness rescue to be a scout master and take kids out into the wilderness. Also a Navy veteran who had during his training went through a taser training, that he had to be tased. So he's experienced that as we talk about this case involving what we think is Officer Parter going for her taser, but instead pulling out her firearm. He was grilled about experiencing that in the Navy. He had some other interesting dynamics in that this is the guy, if you were listening late yesterday, he puts on steel armor, and him and his friends kind of beat themselves up with these steel weapons kind of out of the Renaissance Festival.
He is a medieval reenactor, is what he is. And he's worked at Renfest a couple of times, and I think he led on that's how he got interested in this. And he's in this group now that it's a medieval armored combat kind of organization, and they just they play it out in their backyards. There was also an interesting exchange about that taser experience.
So there you go. Medieval armor guy is a part of this jury. Again, that's day 4. That was from the 3rd, and what was that? The 3rd was was Friday, was last Friday. So jury selection, I guess, is probably finished for today, and it's probably the case will probably be in front of the jury. Um, It'll be very interesting to see how things are going to go. I think it's too early here to for any news. I think I might do a quick search, but um, the oh, actually, it does. I do have. It looks like I do have a little. This is an article I had pulled up. This is from the New York Times that I found regarding, and it says that the article that the jury has been chosen. Jury chosen for the trial of Dante Wright after seeming right, Miss Porter. Dante. I keep saying Dante. It's Dwayne Wright. I don't know why I keep saying. I'm thinking of another guy who was killed by police. But a nurse, a teacher, a bassist, and a student who will have to postpone final exams are among the jurors seated for the trial of Kimberly Porter, the former police officer who faces manslaughter charges in the fatal shooting of Dwayne Wright when she seemed to mistake her gun for her taser. 12 jurors and 2 alternates will consider evidence in perhaps the highest profile trial of a police officer since the spring, when a jury convicted former Minneapolis police officer Derek Chauvin of murdering George Floyd. Miss Potter's trial is scheduled to begin next week, that's this week, in the same courtroom where Mr. Chauvin was tried and expected to continue until about Christmas. Miss Potter, who is white, was an officer with the police department in Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, in a Minneapolis suburb, which she fired one shot into Mr. Wright, who is black, as he tried to break free of another officer who had begun to handcuff him. Miss Potter, 49, shot Wright, 20, a 20-year-old father, in April during a traffic stop that took place during the Chauvin trial. The shooting set off a week of turbulent protests outside a suburban police officer. The jurors for the Potter trial were chosen over 4 days, yada, yada, yada. 3/4 of the jurors who have emerged from the process are white, roughly matching the proportions of white people in Hennepin County, which includes Minneapolis and many of its suburbs. 2 of the 12 jurors are Asian, and 1 is black. Hennepin County is 7.5% Asian and about 14% black. The jury is evenly split between men and women, and the jurors' ages range from the 20s to the 60s. 2 alternate jurors will hear all the evidence, testimony, and arguments of the trial, but will not deliberate over a verdict unless a primary juror is excused for some reason. There is probably no worse job than to be an alternate juror. I was an alternate juror before, and it was terrible because you literally have to do everything a juror does, but no one gives a damn about what you think unless another juror bows out. And, high-profile cases can last for a long time. But I want to talk about the the Minneapolis Police Department. And I think it's important, and I really wonder how many people probably heard this, because this was just before the finality of the jury selection. But this is from Rolling Stone, but this is December 2nd. And what it is the Minnesota sheriffs had broken his professional code of silence to blast the Minneapolis Police Department, saying he's disgusted at the agency's reported violent practices, calling for an overhaul of the agency from top down. Now, he readily admits that he did not support the proposition which would have done away with the police department and created a whole new agency. Again, I believe that part of the issue with that is that the marketing, or not marketing, but the selling of that idea was not properly done, and was not well done, in particularly by the people who were trying to get it done. So people thought that this was a complete wholesale abandoning of the Minneapolis Police Department, which it was not. However, it was not clear what it was going to be. But what we all know, or what should have been clear but was not, is that defund the police is not get rid of the police. It is change the police department and put funds that we've been pouring into the police department and put it in other areas so that police officers are not running out having to, get cats out of trees and deal with a family argument that's gotten a little heated or whatever. So this sounds exactly what this guy is talking about is needed. And I'm going to continue on here and go, at a Wednesday meeting of an advisory council to the state's peace officers standards and training, the sheriff Dean Drenger of Wright County unloaded on the Minneapolis cops who were caught on their own body cameras allegedly hunting protesters in the wake of the murder of George Floyd in 2020. That is, by the way, the incident that brought in Kyle Rittenhouse to Minneapolis. He said, I was absolutely disgusted watching that, adding, I have defended that agency for the last time. So what is he talking about? Well, see if I can find it. I did have that video of what he saw, but here is the video of the sheriff unloading on the Minneapolis Police Department.
For the last 24 months, 23 months, I have been defending the Minneapolis Police Department. People have been on this call and they have talked about Minneapolis Police Department was just shooting people with marking rounds. They were shooting people with beanbag rounds. They were sending flash grenades and pepper ball grenades into crowds, and they weren't doing anything. They were walking along the streets, and I'm like, holy crap, everyone. That doesn't happen. Cops do not do that. Well, no shit. 3 weeks ago, every news station across Minnesota releases the body cam footage of Minneapolis Police Department, again, making headlines. Because why? That's exactly what they were doing. I am telling you, folks, that I was absolutely disgusted watching that. And I've defended that agency for the very last time. Now, I don't agree with the vote that was, obviously the vote was voted down to completely dismantle the police department. That's not a good place to start because there needs to be a plan put in place. But I'm telling you from the top down, that agency needs an overhaul. We are absolutely disgusted. I'm on the Minnesota Sheriff's Association board, and I'm telling you, we are ready to write a letter saying we absolutely denounce whatever is going on with the Minneapolis Police Department. I'm appalled of the lack of leadership in that agency. And more so, I'm absolutely pissed off that, excuse my colorful language this morning, I get so infuriated because so many of these groups, and I love this conversation that's taking place, and as you can all tell, I've been very passionate throughout the last year of this organization. But I am so upset with the lack of leadership and those other agencies throughout the state that truly do an unbelievable job serving our communities, yet we are all cast in the same barrel of crap coming out of Minneapolis proper. I'm not saying that there are not issues in outstate Minnesota. Again, I've got 2 deputies on admin leave right now. There are. It is not standardized, but I will tell you that based on my relationships across the state, meeting with other CLEOs, that we are absolutely appalled at some of the things that we hear, some of the things that we see. And in fact, I had a series of in-house training just over the last 2 weeks. I have 160 licensed cops. And we talked about that very video that was released to the media. I said, is there anyone in this room? I've got 60 of my cops at any given time in this room. I said, is there any single person in this room that would not expect to be fired if you were involved in that circumstance? The discussion was absolutely, and that's why I am so proud to be a leader of this organization, because all 160 of my cops understand that if they did something like that, they would fully anticipate that they would be fired. I don't need a criminal finding that they shot somebody without cause with a beanbag round. I would kick them to the curb faster than you can imagine. So I think that some of the
So, I mean, and why this is so important is it goes back into understanding why it is police officers are right now so discouraged in the police department. And I think I've talked about this on this podcast before. And the suicide levels of for police officers is really high. I think surprisingly so. And the fact of the matter is that when you do these kinds of things, and Kimberly Potter is a part of the Minneapolis Police Department, and when leadership fails at the top, everything fails going down. And that's true both in the police department and it's true on the set of a movie like Rust, which I'll talk about in a minute. We're dealing with the same phenomena. But I want to take a look at this video that they're talking about, this so-called video of cops talking about hunting and shooting on their body cam. I mean, this is some sick stuff, and this is again when we talk about what was going on in the mind of Rittenhouse. When we're talking about, and there was programming on this about these guys going around and thinking that the police were supporting what they were doing. This is exactly what was happening. Rittenhouse and these militias went out armed, and the police had indicated that they were the militias indicated that the police were going to try and drive the protesters to them so that they could take care of them. And you get this on video, you see this, they're talking to them, and then you get this body cam footage, which is damning. I'm going to play this. It's from the BBC.
Gotcha! Go, go, go. Get up there. Get up there. Let him have it, boys. Let him have it. Get out of here.
These are protesters they're firing at, by the way. These are protesters they are shooting at.
During the time of George Floyd's murder, I was on the front lines at protests. I was doing press conferences. I was organizing to protect communities, specifically Black communities, from being burnt to the ground.
Nope. Be very, very quiet.
The footage was horrific. It was terrifying. It is alarming to the masses, but I think it's an everyday encounter for Black people. I said this during the uprising, that the police were retaliating against Black people.
Tonight it was just nice to hear. We're gonna go find some more people. Instead of chasing people around, we're going to hunt. You guys are out hunting people now. It's just a nice change of tempo.
Yep.
In this particular instance, the police were not necessarily responding to an immediate threat. They grouped together and had a plan to go out and to commit assaults and congratulating each other once they took this action. Further, it's just like a violation of constitutional rights. Community engagement means talking to people, not shooting them with rubber bullets and going out and hunting them and so forth.
To hear how comfortable all of the officers were, being comfortable with hunting people, they were taking this as if it was a game. This is not Grand Theft Auto.
We're unarmed! What are we gonna do to you? We're out here peacefully protesting! This is America! We can say what we want!
Based solely on the video, this is an assault. I would hope that these men are no longer members of the Minnesota Police Department.
You have to set the standard and to know that this behavior is not acceptable, right? Because again, for too long, we have to understand that these systems have been in place where officers have murdered, brutalized, and they've been allowed to stay on the force, right? And so you have a system and you have a culture that says it's okay to brutalize and murder Black people. And if you don't set precedents that says something different, is going to continue to perpetuate.
She is absolutely right. It's a culture, and it's not just a lack of leadership, by the way. As I've discussed and talked about with Detective Darnley Small, who's a trainer, a retired trainer, this is about somewhere along the line the leadership has failed and a new leader has come in and retrained these cops to become these basically to see protesters, the people who pay their salaries, who are there to supposedly there to protect and serve, as the enemy. That's why a guy like a Donald Trump can come in and say, you know, when you put the guys in the cars after you've arrested them, you know, and they put the hand on the head, you can take the hand off, and they cheer, right? Because a culture has already been created that's like, yes, they're the enemy, and this guy Donald Trump gets it. He gets what we're talking about and what we're having to deal with, these animals, and that's how they feel about it. And the sheriff was right. It is a lack of leadership. You know, what to me is it's sometimes unbelievable that nobody knows anything that this was going on, and everybody's like, oh my God, it's like, you know, Casablanca when they find out that there's gambling going on in the inn or in the place. It's like she's shocked. Meanwhile, that guy was in there gambling the day before. You know, I find it a little bit hard to believe that nobody knew that this was going on. I mean, even though the sheriff is not in the county or whatever, I cannot believe that he's not hearing along the grapevine that there's a big problem in Minneapolis Police Department that would allow this, particularly since this has been going on for years. The other thing is I thought it was interesting. Fry, the mayor, who you know, is like it's you know. I've had sympathy for him because he's a white guy in a diverse area, and he's a Democrat, and he seems to be, you know, where the people are, the best you can expect from a white person under that circumstance. He was against doing anything about reform of the police department, and yet after this video came out, he was going on talking about how difficult it is to fire a police officer. I thought I had that video. I know I watched it. I don't know why I didn't save these. I should have saved them all. But I mean, you want to talk about lack of leadership in his case. I mean, that guy's the mayor. He is the top person. Again, he is the top person in the city. The top cop, or the top boss there. He hires the police chief and all. And as far as I know, unless somebody can say something different, that's how it usually works. And to sit back and to say, and to sort of, you know, to some extent, in my view, deflect blame by saying, you know, it's very difficult. And I think he posted a chart. I'm going to try and take a look and see if I could find the video of him. Because, I mean, this is a guy who's literally whining, bitching, moaning about how difficult it is to fire a police officer. That's done intentionally. That's why they can get away with doing this. And that's why nobody shut off the video camera, probably because they thought that they'd be protected, that video would never go out. But notice only 2 guys left the force. They're probably in Texas somewhere on our border, or, you know, some other place where they enjoy this kind of stuff. Meanwhile, the whole notion of people taking this thing seriously, like the mayor, is basically out there saying, listen, I can't do anything about it. But by the way, I'm going to be against the proposition that would do something about this and would take this seriously and would drastically cut back not only on the funding of the police department, but also on the change the structure of how we handle policing in the city. So, you know, this is why I am not certain. I totally believe that nobody knew, that they're shocked that this police department was totally like this.